I think we're all excited for Syracuse football this season, more so than in years past. So let's set the expectations and what the Orange have to do to achieve those expectations.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we are going over the expectations for Syracuse football next season. We're going over why there is a lot of hype, the keys to success, and then whether or not the Orange are actually going to live up to our expectations for next season. Now, I know the coaching staff and the players will all say they want to go undefeated, they want to win every game, and I get that. But our job is to, set the bar, set the expectations for this team. So that's what we're doing here on today's podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So right off the bat, I want to lay out my expectation for Syracuse football next season, and that is to win at minimum 7 games, probably more towards what I think will happen, which is 8 wins for this team before the bowl game. So 8-4 is what I really want to see from this team, and then a bowl appearance along with that as well. Like, I don't count if they go 7-5 and win the bowl game, doesn't really mean as much as if they go 8-4 in the regular season and then lose the bowl game, even though they're both 8-5, because the way it is nowadays with players sitting out, bowl games aren't really a great litmus test for a team. So I want to see the better regular season record, 8-4 over 7-5. Why there is a lot of hype for this team this season, and why a lot of people, including many of you guys who are watching and listening to this podcast, believe that 8 wins is probably on the lower end of what some of you guys are projecting. The reason why there's a lot of hype, there's 3 of them in my book. First of all, they got a new coach, new coaching staff, Fran Brown. Obviously, a top recruiter, someone who's a very good speaker with the media. He's really letting us in on the program more so than in previous years. So there's a lot of hype, and there's obviously the honeymoon phase, which I talked about a few days ago here on the podcast. We're all just excited that there's new and it's fresh, and that this seems to be a completely different style than Dino Babers. And no disrespect to Dino Babers, good person, left on good terms, but just not the greatest football coach. So we're hoping for improvement under Fran Brown. Second of all, because of Fran Brown and his coaching staff for the most part, they had a solid transfer portal class and recruiting class for this season. Top 25 transfer class over on 24/7 Sports. It's headlined by the 4 stars, Kyle McCord from Ohio State, our new quarterback, Fadil Diggs, the defensive lineman from Texas A&M, who was only given an 81 overall on the new college football video game. That one didn't really make much sense to me, honestly. He was was he even a top 10 player in the video game? For those that actually play the video game, please let me know in the comments section below. That one seemed a little bit off. The other ratings I was honestly fine with for Syracuse. It was just Fadil Diggs was massively underrated in the video game. But I think more importantly than just getting guys like Kyle McCord and Fadil Diggs, the coaching staff was able to retain the stars that were currently on the roster, right? They got back Marlowe Wax. That's big. They got back Oronde Gadsden because they got him a quarterback in Kyle McCord. Justin Barron was literally filing the papers to enter the transfer portal. He was about to be officially in the portal, and then the coaching staff was able to retain him before he ever got to the portal. And then LeQuint Allen as well. So your incumbent starting running back is back, a 1,000-yard rusher, a good pass catcher as well. He's back in the mix. So overall, you kept the stars, and you also brought in more players in the transfer portal, talented players, I must add. It's not just the 4 stars, guys like Zede Haynes and Jackson Meeks. They got back Deuce Chestnut as well. So overall, there's a reason why there's a lot of hype, but I'm still on the 8-4 is my expectation for this team. The other thing is, obviously, we've talked about it before here on the podcast, but you guys could be new if you're watching or listening to this. Easy schedule for Syracuse football. There's just no other real way to say it. And easy, you can put in air quotes, but at the same time, ESPN ranked Syracuse's schedule as the easiest in the Power Four. The easiest one belongs to Syracuse. Why that is the case? Well, for first and foremost, you don't have to play Florida State and you don't have to play Clemson in the regular season. Those are 2 of the main powers in the ACC historically, and you don't have to play either one of them. There you go. Already you're off to a great start. I've also said this before here on the podcast, but last year they also had to play North Carolina. And North Carolina obviously was led by Drake May, who went 3rd overall to the New England Patriots in last year's draft. They don't have to play any quarterback nearly as talented as Drake May. Maybe Cam Ward for Miami proves me wrong, but other than that, they're not going to have to play someone who's going to go top 5 in the NFL draft for next season. So that's another reason why it's easy. Their toughest non-conference game is at UNLV. Now, I'm not meaning to disrespect UNLV because I think that is a tough game, especially you got to go on the road to Vegas. It's not going to be easy, and they might lose that one. But at the same time, if at UNLV is your toughest non-conference game, then you got a pretty light non-conference schedule. That's your toughest one. It's pretty simple. I mean, the other 3 games on there, Ohio in week 1, you got Holy Cross at home as well, and you have UConn towards the end of the season. It ain't UConn basketball. It's UConn football. I'm telling you, they're not very good. So their non-conference schedule is easy. Their overall schedule doesn't include FSU or Clemson, and they don't have to face a Drake May level talent at quarterback. There's a reason why there's a lot of hype here. I'm still on the 8-4 train, 8-4 in the regular season. I'm not going to bump it up until I actually see this team play. But overall, that's why there's a lot of hype, right? And that's why it's fair to set high expectations for this team. And I must add that 8-4 as a record prediction for me, at least, is the highest I've had for this team in years. Highest in years. Most of the time in the preseason, I'm a little bit less bullish on the team. I remember last year just hoping they would maybe make a bowl. They ended up making a bowl in a roundabout way. They were 5-6. They fired Dino Babers and then made the bowl. But that was kind of my expectation. Hope that they go 6-6. This year, I don't think any of us would be okay with 6-6, barring something really bad happening. So, yeah, there's a lot of hype for this team. Can they live up to it? Well, there are some keys to success for us to go over, and they might not be, some of them are going to be maybe a little bit more basic, but others, not so much. It's one thing to watch baseball on TV. That at times can get pretty boring, but going to a game in person is an awesome experience, and I'm looking forward to watching the Mets for the rest of the summer. And the way I'll watch them in person is by using Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. All you have to do is go to Gametime and search the team you want to see of your choosing. It can be MLB or any league or any team for that matter, and ticket options will appear right away. My favorite part is the all-in pricing feature. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Warmer, sunnier days are calling. Fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the streaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and on today's show, we are setting the expectations for Syracuse football for next season. We went over why the Orange have more hype than in recent years earlier on the podcast, so if you missed it, be sure to check it out. But a brief summary for you all. They obviously have a new coach in Fran Brown and new staff overall. They had a solid transfer and recruiting class for this season, and obviously the easy schedule. And ESPN ranked it as the easiest in the country, so a lot of hype for Syracuse football next season. I'm setting the bar at 8-4. Leave a comment in the comment section below what your record prediction and your expectation is for next season. Now, let's go over the keys for success for this team next year. Number one, and this is a big pet peeve, please clean up the penalties. Please. I am begging this team to clean them up. Penalties will be the end of any team out there. You just can't get away with penalties. You can only get away with them for so long before it bites you. All right? Here are the penalties per game ranks in the last 5 years for Syracuse football. And spoiler alert, it ain't very good. So last season, 2023, Syracuse was bottom 15 in the country in penalties per game. That means they took a lot of penalties. That's not very good, right? In 2022, with a more talented, it's not a more talented roster than this season, but it's sort of up there. In 2022, they had the most penalties per game in the country, which means they were dead last. The worst, the absolute worst. There was no team in the FBS that was more prone to committing penalties than Syracuse football. That's how bad it was. Speaking of flags biting a team, not working out, do you guys remember in 2022 that game at Clemson when Syracuse was 6-0? And winning that game, and then all of a sudden, Cade Klubnik is rolling out to his right on a 3rd and forever, and he's leaning towards the sideline, and he's a mile away from the first down, and all of a sudden, he gets hit with a late hit out of bounds by Elijah Fuentes-Cundiff. You guys remember that? It completely turned the whole game around. Turned the entire game. One mistake killed it. And obviously, from then on, Syracuse went on a downward spiral for that season. But imagine had they won that game. And I don't think they would have eventually gone on to, go 10-2. At some point, they would have slipped up in that season. But they were on their way to upsetting Clemson in Clemson until that penalty happened. And they were worst in the country in 2022 in committing penalties. You got to clean them up. 2021, they were bottom half of the country. So, hey, improvement right there, right? 2020, that was a really dark year for Syracuse football. They were bottom 25 in the country. And in 2019, they were second worst in the country. So overall, This team over the past 5 seasons has been committing so many penalties per game, and there's a reason why they're not winning a lot of football games because, in part, they're committing too many penalties. So for this season, if they want to live up to the hype, please stop committing all those penalties. It is not good. Number 2, go undefeated in non-conference play. Simple. Go undefeated. Ohio, you should be able to win that one in week 1. Holy Cross, they're going to win that one. And UConn, they'll win that one too. So that's already 3-0. The big question is whether or not they're going to win at UNLV. That's their toughest non-conference game. But if this team is truly good enough, and I believe they are to at least win 8 games, they can win at UNLV. That's a winnable game. So win at UNLV, go 4-0 in non-conference play. That's a key to success. And the third and final one, and you can argue this is honestly more important than the first 2, you have to beat Georgia Tech at home in week 2. They have to. And I know you might be thinking, well, you have to win every game or you have to win these games. But I'm telling you, Georgia Tech week 2 sets the tone for the season. They have a solid quarterback and coach tandem with Haynes King and Brent Key. This was a team that qualified for a bowl game last year for the first time since 2018. So they have momentum heading into next season. It kind of reminds me of Syracuse and Purdue. I believe it was week 3 of 2022. It was a home game, and that was a back-and-forth crazy affair. If you recall, Oronde Gadsden caught that winning touchdown in the corner of the end zone at the end of the game. But when Syracuse won that game, it set the tone for at least the first half of the year when they started 6-0. Right? There's always that tone-setting game. And for Syracuse this year, it's week 2 against Georgia Tech. So they have to win that one. That's an ACC rival right there. You got to win that one. So the 3 keys for success and living up to the expectation, which for me is 8-4. Clean up the penalties, go undefeated in non-conference play, and please beat Georgia Tech in week 2. If they beat Georgia Tech in week 2, depending on how they win, we'll have a good idea of what this team is. If they blow them out, they can be really, really special. If they just win, they're probably going to end up with what I think, 7, 8 wins, maybe 9 wins, right? In that ballpark. If they lose at home, hopefully it's just a bad day, right? Otherwise, maybe they're just not as good as we thought. So Georgia Tech at home in week 2 is a huge game. Now coming up, is Syracuse going to live up to the expectations? Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. On today's show, we are setting the expectations for Syracuse football next season. I have them at 8-4, pre-bowl game, of course. Leave a comment in the comment section below what your expectations are for Syracuse football next season. We went over why there's a lot of hype for this team, the 3 keys for success, 2 of which involve winning games, and the other is, cleaning up penalties. And now, will Syracuse actually live up to those expectations? Here's what I'll say. Obviously, the classic answer is it depends on what your expectations are for this team. If you're in the ballpark of, I just want this team to make a bowl game, which I'd imagine is not many of you. I think most of you would say that's not good enough. Just making a bowl because that's what they did last year. then yeah, they're probably going to make a bowl game this year, so they'll live up to that, right? They're talented enough. Their schedule is easy enough to where, barring a catastrophe, they're going to win 6 games. All right? So I think they live up to at least making a bowl game, but like I said, for myself and for many of you watching or listening, that's probably not good enough in your book. Now, mine is 7, 8, possibly, I'm not predicting 9 wins, but in the ballpark of 7 to 9 regular season wins. Somewhere there. That's why I'm ultimately saying 8 and 4. I do expect them to do that. It's really going to come down to what I said the keys to success are, right? If they clean up the penalties, and I'm not asking them to be, the most disciplined team in the league. Now, obviously, if they are the most disciplined team in the FBS, that would certainly help their chances of winning. But overall, if they're just upper half in the country, that's substantial improvement already. This is a team that I don't even actually know the last time they were in the upper half in least penalties per game. When they were actually really, it has to have been pre-Dino Babers. Has to be. Because I only went back the last 5 years, and honestly, it wasn't very good when I gave you the list. So they have to clean up the penalties, obviously, to reach the 7 to 9 win threshold. They can go 3-1 in non-conference play, but I really hope they go 4-0. And again, beating Georgia Tech at home is going to be critical for this team. Now, if your expectation is winning 10 regular season games, that's going to be tricky. That's tricky. I think they have the ceiling that they could do it. I think they do. I think it's kind of similar to 2022 where they did have that ceiling to do it. But you're asking for basically everything to go right for this team to win 10 games in the regular season. You're asking for, really good injury luck on the field as well. I think they're a talented team, but I am not sure that 10 wins is definitely on the upper ceiling of this team. So that's going to be pushing it if your expectation is going to be that high. I don't know if they can live up to that, at least for this season. Now, if it's college football playoff for you, similar to people who are just expecting 6 wins, right? And that's it. That's not good enough, 6 wins, obviously. But what I was saying with the college football playoff is I believe that very few of you guys that are watching or listening have the expectation that this team is going to be in the college football playoff. Now, I understand where it might be coming from because we went over what the hype is of this team, right? Easy schedule, solid transfer class, new coach, new quarterback, etc. We get all that. On top of the fact that the college football playoff is expanding to 12 teams. At the same time, this is something that I have discussed here on the podcast. It actually works against Syracuse that their schedule is really easy and that they're in the ACC when it comes to college football playoff talk. Because let's say they do reach the upper part of their ceiling, which is, in my opinion, about 10 wins, at least in the regular season. I don't think 10-2 is going to be good enough to make the college football playoff. And I don't think, unless they win the ACC, because that would be an automatic bid, that they would qualify for it at 10-3. So essentially, they would have to go 11-1. If they lose the ACC championship game, then they're 11-2, and they probably get into the college football playoff that way. Because 10 wins in the regular season, if they lose in the ACC title game, they're 10-3. They're probably taking 9-win SEC, 9-win Big Ten teams over Syracuse. That's just the reality of what it is. I don't make the rules. I just react to them. So if your expectation is college football playoff, I would say it shouldn't be for this year, assuming that Fran Brown and his coaching staff stick around for a little while. That if you want to say that at least make it once over the next 5 years, sure, I can get behind that. But for this year, I'm not ready to go to college football playoff just yet. I see the optimism. I'm not willing to go there yet. Overall, I got them at 8-4. I've said it for months on this podcast. I was originally 7-5. I amended it to 8-4, and I'm not switching from 8-4 until I see this team play. That being said, I think 8-4 is fair. I think we'd all be happy with it. At the same time, as I have said before too, if you're a player, if you're a coaching staff, your goal should not be 8-4. Your goal should be to win every single game. And I like how when people ask them that question, that's how they answer it. We want to win every single game. It sounds cliche, but I don't want to hear from the coach or from a quarterback or whoever that their expectation is to lose 4 games, right? That's my job to say that, not theirs. So I'm happy that they believe that the sky's the limit for them. That's what they're supposed to believe. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and whenever or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So that's about wrapping it up here for today's show. We went over the expectations for Syracuse football next season. And come tomorrow, August 1st, there will be actual meaningful football games played in August. So football season is one day away because, well, you have August, you actually have football games. And then we're going to have football all the way until February, if you're counting the NFL, of course. So buckle up, everyone, because football season is here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And let's hope that Syracuse football has an exciting and winning 2024 season.